We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Lots of weird scheduling this week. We're recording on a Wednesday afternoon Eastern time, so that's a highly unusual time for us. But here we are. It's episode number 656 of AVRant, and we're here to answer a whole bunch of questions.
That's true. So, yeah. So today was the first day of school for the kids. So last night we were supposed to record, but I was like, it was like 9:30, and they were still trying to get together their crap that they were going to take to school tomorrow.
Why are people starting school in the middle of August and in the middle of the week in the middle of August? What is going on?
Okay, so Florida has to build into their schedule hurricane days.
Okay.
So there's days that they have to have set aside. So in case we have to take a week off for a hurricane, they have like extra holidays. So that's part of that. The other part of it is last year or the year before, I think it was last year, they decided that they no longer wanted to have the winter break start be at the end of the semester. Okay. So they wanted to finish the semester before winter break. And therefore, because my whole childhood when I went to school, you finished winter break, your Christmas break or whatever you called it, and then you came back, and a week later you took your midterms.
Ah, right.
And it was always pretty stressful. So they decided that they would just try to finish everything beforehand, which means that we start school in the middle of August, but we finish in like the middle of May. So I honestly do not care. I honestly do not care.
I mean, it's hot all the time in Florida, so what does it really matter, I guess?
The kids are like, Daddy, is it still summer? I'm like, it's always summer. It's always summer. And for the last week and a half, we've been my deck out back has been a death trap. I had like a wood deck out there. It's been a death trap. So we decided to pull it up because that shouldn't take too long. So that's what I was doing this morning with my parents because the kids are now in school, so they're no longer helping. If you can't see my air quotes, I hope you can hear my air quotes because children
Tom
helping
is making the bunny ears. Yep.
Yeah, I am. Hasn't been easy. And then we got the puppy on top of all of that. So Violet is whatever. So the reason that I was a few minutes late for this is because the puppy was supposed to go to the bathroom and she wanted to go to the bathroom. So.
Now, just for my own edification, would Monday night have worked if I had been ready with the topic list?
Yeah.
Monday night would have worked. Okay, well, then it is also very much partially my fault. But regardless, here we are. That's good. I just remember, I'm in Vancouver, Canada, and school always starts the day after Labor Day. So in September there, that's very consistent for us. And I would get very upset seeing anything saying back to school in the month of July. I'm like, no, you don't get to say back to school in the month of July when we don't go back until, a week into September. But I guess if kids are going back in August, then that's why you can say back to school at the end of July. That's rotten.
Yeah. All right, so this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask by emailing question@avrant.com. You go to www.avrant.com, leave us a comment there, facebook.com/AVRant Podcast, and then contact us directly, rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom @avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. If you want to see our videos, they're at youtube.com/AVRant. Podcast.
Nope, just AVRant.
Or AVRant.
That's the one that's short.
Whatever. And there's no comments there because YouTube's awful. So let's just get straight into the listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, to support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that financially is going to patreon.com/AVRant Podcast, where you can become a monthly subscriber for as little as $1 a month. You can support the podcast monthly, as much as $1 million trillion
just
a month.
Hold down the 0 button and let it fly.
Let it fly.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to sign
And
up.
if you don't, you're a coward.
It's a automatic monthly donation, a voluntary subscription, if you want to think of it that way. We have 85 patrons over there, so that number is ever so slowly ticking up. It goes up and down. It vacillates. Let's see if we can get to 100. That would be sweet.
100 would be great. $100 each?
Yeah.
That'd be fine. I am logging into Ecobee so that I can control my thermostat.
You and your thermostat.
I am still hot from the 3 hours of working in the Florida weather.
I don't blame
and
you.
the thing that sucks more than anything is it's always raining.
Yeah.
It's always raining.
Humid on top of everything.
And it's humid constantly, and you can hear the rumbling off. You know it's raining someplace. You know someplace somebody's putting away their tools because they got rained out. And you're thinking, you lucky bastard. Where do I sign up for that?
Well, if I were in Florida, holy cow. Well, the AC would just never turn off. It's 24 degrees today, 24 Celsius where I am. I've got my AC going.
You're a crazy person. I'd have the windows open. I'd be basking in the glow of it. All right. If you can't support the podcast financially, feel free to support us in any way you can think of. Just let us know what you did so we can mention you. We're going to thank Carlton for offering to figure out why we keep exceeding our bandwidth limit on our website every month. That's right. I meant to email that guy back. I don't remember what he said, but the thing is, is that we get hosted by a friend of mine. So, it's not quite the same as getting hosted by GoDaddy or something like that. I don't understand what the problem is.
I certainly have no clue. So,
well, the other guy looked at it and he said, "Oh yeah, you should be fine now." And
it was for like 3 months, and then it went back. I don't know.
So, Carlton, forgive me. My life has been crazy, and I will get back to you at some point. If I don't, then thank you for offering. And also thank you to Sammy, who let Accessories for Less and SVS know that we sent him their way. So thank you, Sammy.
Yes, Carlton, Sammy, thank you very much for supporting the podcast. And for anyone who would like to make a one-time donation instead of an automatic monthly donation, you can do so via PayPal if you just come to avrant.com, our website, when it's up and running, so not at the end of the month until we get that fixed. Over on the right-hand side, there's a little thingy that says support AVRant with a picture of a cup of coffee, and that'll just take you over to PayPal, where you can use your PayPal account, or just a credit card if you don't want to sign up for an account. So there we go.
Right. All right. I didn't get any water, and I'm still dehydrated from before. I could tell it's not going to work. And I'm going to go out there, and she's going to see me and start whinging, or I'm going to see her, and she's going to have peed in her crate, and I'm going to be upset, and I'm going to have to fix it because I can't, whatever. And then, so we're going to try to just tough it out for a little bit, so that power on. If not, you might be. The last half of this podcast might be me giving a dog a bath, and she does not like baths. And Rob talking.
Could be.
So I was going to actually have her in here. She actually sits really good in here, but there's so many wires on the ground.
I don't think that's a precedent we want to set. Doggy in the room at the.
Oh no, I think she'll be fine.
I hope so.
It will be fine. All right, in the news, Disney made their anticipated Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus bundle official. It'll cost $12.99 a month in the U.S. when Disney Plus launches on November 12th. But it's an ad-supported version of Hulu, and there's no mention of a different tier or bundle for the ad-free version, which is the only one I will consider.
That's what everybody instantly everybody online was like, so could I drop ESPN Plus and just get the ad-free version of Hulu?
Yes.
Or
sign me up for that
could
one.
I pay a little bit more and get the ad-free version of Hulu? That's what everybody asked.
I will say that if the year rolls through, and it's going to come out in November, right? So that would roll through the 2020 summer games.
It ought to.
I would consider getting ESPN for for that year, but I would not consider getting ESPN for literally any other reason. And the only reason I really want it is because they're going to have climbing.
Right.
In this
I'm looking forward to Hulu finally coming to Canada, because they have definitely said that it will, probably not right at launch day, but within a short amount of time. They are definitely bringing Hulu to more countries than just the United States, which is the case at the moment. So I am definitely looking forward to that. That'll be good. ESPN, not so much.
That's right. You can finally see that last season of Community.
I can get that on Amazon Prime. Canadian version of Amazon Prime.
No, yeah, it sucks anyways. But
Yahoo
real
Screen,
bad.
what a success that thing was. Yes.
Yeah, it was real bad. Basically, if you watch Community, if you're interested in watching the Community, when Donald Glover leaves, stop watching that show. Pretty much. That's the last episode I thought
they
was
called
good.
that entirely in that a fantastic episode where there was all the multiple different timelines. The worst timeline was the one where Troy left, Donald Glover's character. That was the worst timeline, and
that one with the dice.
That's
the one
right.
They were
and sure enough, after Donald Glover left the show, that was the worst timeline.
I'm not saying that he carried that show
No.
because it was definitely an ensemble piece, but the ensemble at that point was broken.
Yep.
You know, they had already lost enough. I mean, no one really missed Chevy Chase when he left.
I mean, honestly, if you go back to the early episodes, his character was like surprisingly critical to what that show was. But anyway, there are people who have never watched Community, so there we go.
All right, Disney Plus is $7 a month by itself, and Hulu with ads is $6. So this bundle basically gives you ESPN for $5, which is normally $5 by itself for free. No word on bundles for other countries, so you all can suck it. Sorry, Ecuador.
Likely no other countries will be getting ESPN, but Hulu and Disney Plus. I mean, maybe there just won't be a bundle. Maybe we'll just get them separately. But I'm looking forward to Hulu finally being available outside the US.
So shout out to, I guess these are comments here. Nathan says congrats to Tom, and I got a picture of somebody sent me a picture of their dog, and the dog said wants to play.
I see.
Or whatever. And we took Violet to two people's houses where they had dogs, and she was great with both of them. Like, there was a little dog that she was playing with, and Violet would roll over on her back and play very submissively. And then we took her to a place, a friend's house, that they have a breeder dog for the southern guide dogs. So guide dogs, like seeing eye dogs, stuff like that. If you wash out of that, if you don't quite make it, but you still got whatever, good genes, they'll make you into it. They'll have them as a breeder dog. So they have this breeder dog, and this dog's like 60 pounds. And she got super excited that there was a puppy there, and she was running around the backyard at full speed. It was like a freight train. And Violet was like, I'm not sure what to do about this. So her reaction was to start, basically playing very dominantly with that dog. And it went swimmingly. They were great friends. So it went very, very well. So Nathan says congrats to me for the new puppy, and we get to say congrats to him. He just got engaged. He's on board with his home theater, and which of course is the only reason why he even considered marrying her.
It really must be.
You should get that in writing, sir, because that's be a lot.
That's how you know she's a keeper. No, congratulations, Nathan. That's fantastic. Happy to hear that, and good on you.
Yeah. My wife owned a TV that she never watched when we got married, and I got into home theater. I was into home theater, but didn't have the money to have the gear before we got married. So, it was really a long process for me to get her on board with it. But the thing that convinced her, as somebody who doesn't ever watch TV, is having a home theater means you don't have a TV. We have literally no other TVs in this house. You cannot watch TV anywhere in this house except a computer or a laptop or something like that, except in the home theater. And she loves that. She loves that, there's not a TV constantly playing in some room, distracting us from what we're talking about or whatever. So anyways, that's a selling point for her. Andrew just wanted to say that he loved Tom's reaction to reading that his budget speaker setup is all Paradigm Monitor V5 series speakers that he got for next to nothing. Andrew says that's pretty much everyone's who's into audios, pretty much everyone who's into audio in Nova Scotia, Canada, where he lives, bought one of the major Canadian speaker brands at some point. So there's a ton of used gear available locally. He did a lot of wheeling and dealing, starting with $300 for the sale of his old B&W speakers, and wound up with a 5.2 Paradigm Monitor V5 version 5 setup for only $150 more. There was a lots of buying and selling in between, but that's where he ended up. Two other things he wanted to mention. One, he used a Dricore subfloor tiles, which are just a piece of OBS over insulation, plus some dollar store carpet to make his own subwoofer isolation platforms for about $9 a pop. He says they made a night and day difference. No more vibrating walls, and his Audyssey seemed to have a much easier time setting consistent trim levels for his subs. And secondly, he wound up using bipole speakers overhead for Atmos. Everyone seems to say not to do it, but they work really well.
Yeah, I mean, true bipole speakers should work absolutely fine because they're essentially just a very wide dispersion speaker. So
right.
I think maybe some of it comes from a lot of the ones that are sort of the trapezoidal shape speakers are actually dipoles, and that,
well,
I mean, that would probably still work, to be honest, but...
Yeah, as long as you're not sitting directly underneath it in the null. But the real thing, though, I think, is that most people aren't going to take bipole or dipole, for that matter, speakers and mount them on their ceilings. Most people, and I think that's why Dolby Atmos is all sort of, direct firing, downward firing speakers, fire them directly down, because they assume that, people are going to be using in-ceiling speakers.
Right.
So you're right. Bipole speakers are just very wide dispersion monopole speakers, and they should work just fine. So, but it just, I think it's a use case scenario where most people aren't.
And I do like that you made your own subwoofer isolation platforms. That's a good tip. That should be easy to pick up. Any hardware store should have those Dricore subfloor tiles. And although I don't know in what amounts you can purchase them, I don't know if you can literally just buy one 2 foot by 2 foot little square. I'm assuming they would come in a package. He had some left over from a renovation, so that's why it worked out very easily in that regard.
All right, Sammy just wanted to share his updates based on some of our recommendations. He replaced an old Integra receiver with a Marantz SR5012, and he thinks it's amazing in terms of its modern setup, wizard, and features. He replaced some B&W speakers that he's been using since the 90s with some Focal Aria 900 series speakers. He says the difference was night and day, and that they've breathed new life into his music sources. An SVS PB1000 replaces 20-year-old JBL 10-inch sub, and once again, he's amazed who knew such a small box can produce that much bass. And finally, he bought a reconditioned 75-inch Vizio P-Series TV to replace a curved 55-incher. He wants to say thanks. These all turned out to be very high-value purchases. They are like giving away curved speakers at Sam's right now. Curved displays at Sam's. I mean, they are ridiculously cheap. Like, I almost bought one simply because it's like, a third the price that they used to be when they were out. And I'm like, well, this would be a fine monitor. And if I come home with another monitor, my wife's going to straight up murder me. I mean, she will murder me. That you will not even. There will be.
There are still a very few curved screens, like new models, still being made. I think only by Samsung. I'm not sure if LG might have one curved LCD model that they're still selling, but that is a trend that did not catch on. I'm fine with that.
Thank God.
I'm thankful for it.
Well, and the reason was I was like, oh, if I sit close enough, because I'm, I'll use it for a PC monitor, then the curve is actually pretty immersive and kind of fun. I'm like, I still want my lines to be straight. I'm sorry. I want my lines to be straight. What if the line isn't straight because of the stupid curve? What if my head is not at the perfect point,
right where in the center of the radio?
It has to be right there so that you're still seeing a rectangle.
That's right.
What if I'm not sitting right there? What if I sit a little bit to this? What if my wife wants to watch something with me? I can't do it. He says, what? Jaremy Pyle is...
Yeah, I'm not sure if we want to promote somebody, the contest. There's we've said it now, so there's a listener of ours.
I don't care. Promote
sure.
what you want.
Jaremy Pyle is a listener of ours. He has entered a contest over at GIK. He bought a whole bunch of GIK Acoustics products and put them up and sent in a picture, and they're having a little photo contest where you can vote on your favorite theaters. So, hey, let's throw him some clicks his way. We'll have the link to take you exactly to his voting.
Is this the picture?
This is the picture. No, wait, not the one above.
Oh, okay.
If you click on the link, it'll take you to the picture. We're seeing the back of his room, not the front of his room, because the back of the room is where he has primarily put most of his panels.
Oh, sure.
And there you go. We can throw some clicks his way, and there you go. Hope you win, Jaremy.
Yeah, me too. All right, questions. I am so tired.
Dude, when are you not tired, dude? I've never found a time of day when you are not tired.
I know. Well, I mean, I just worked 3 hours in the freaking yard pulling up the last of the decking, cutting through the last of the the framing around it, and then pulling up about half a dozen or a dozen posts that have been concreted into the ground, which was pointless. Don't ever concrete your posts in the ground in Florida, because or cement. My wife's going to kill me because I'm going to say it wrong. She's going to get mad. Anyways, because the ground's so wet, it doesn't really do anything. The water table's like 1.5 feet down. My kids thought I was busting pipes. You busted pipes, Daddy? There's water everywhere. Yeah, dude, that's the water. It's just right there. All right, questions. Kris has been using a Harmony remote and everything was working perfectly until he upgraded to a JVC projector. All of his sources, except for his Oppo 203 Ultra HD Blu-ray player, are plugged into his Denon receiver, which then feeds his JVC. And all of those work just fine. But in the case of his Oppo, he needs to send his video directly to the JVC since his Denon is old enough that it cannot pass through 4K with HDR. So the video from the Oppo is going straight to the JVC, and he's using the Oppo audio-only HDMI output to connect to his Denon. When he uses the Harmony remote to power things on, the JVC doesn't switch to the correct HDMI input, and the Denon doesn't output sound. Pressing help gets the JVC to switch to the correct HDMI input, but he then has to power cycle his Denon to get the sound working. Can he fix this by adjusting delays in the Harmony activity? He isn't sure what the order of all the commands being sent ought to be. This is weird.
I mean, it's I think it's just a matter of, we know that the JVC has slow HDMI handshaking. There is some warm-up time when you first turn it on. So I'm fairly sure it's simply a matter of, the commands are being sent by the Harmony. Okay, all you devices turn on, and then all you devices go to your correct inputs. But that hasn't been quite enough time for the JVC to actually warm up in the first place.
Yeah, but that doesn't explain the Denon.
Well, I think that's a handshaking thing, because once the Denon does finally connect, then I don't think there's that secondary handshake between the Denon and the Oppo happening to get the audio working, which is why the power cycling works of the Denon. So this is all this is a bit tricky, because those would be long delays. And you don't necessarily want all of those delays in there when you're just switching from one activity to another. You'd only want the delays in there when you're first powering up the JVC, right? Because if the JVC is already on and you've been watching some other source, and then you're just switching to the Oppo from one activity to another, you don't want these super long delays in between. It's unnecessary. I mean, I kind of think this might be a case where you just resort to manually sending commands instead of relying on the one button press activity. I mean, I don't know. It's not the epitome of.
I mean, you could literally just set, add a second, input switch.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because I mean, the initial turn on activity, you're probably not going to be able to put the delay in there long enough, but you could just add to the end of that switch on activity. Send the input button again to the JVC now that it's had enough time to warm up. And I mean, you could even put in there, turn the Denon off, turn it back on. It's not super slick.
How about this? I got an idea. How about this? How about leave it the way it is and then set a new activity called fix.
Right. Or even just
have it. Yeah, and have just have another button there that says fix the sound or fix the whatever, and have it power cycle your. And so it's basically, it goes from a one button press to a two button press, which when you're flipping between things you don't have to ever press. If you're going from your Xbox to your cable box, something like that, you don't have to press that fix button. I guess that would be my solution, which would just then power cycle the.
Yeah, I mean, all you're doing there is a macro. Everything. That is straight up just a macro at that point. But yeah, just because it does have this slow HDMI handshaking on that JVC, I mean, you could program in the delays in your Harmony. I mean, you could leave what it is right now, and then on the end of that activity, you could just tack on, okay, put in a delay, now press the input button for a second time, now power cycle the Denon, and there it is. You could do that. That would be the order of doing things, or Tom's suggestion of just putting all of those secondary commands into a sequence that you would activate manually, because you wouldn't have to do it every time that you're just switching between activities.
Right. I mean, I guess you have to buy a new projector. It seems to be the answer to the solution.
I mean, it's not the super slick. It's also not the end of the world. So, yeah.
Right. This is definitely a first world problem. Phil loves his 2-channel music setup. He's using an Anthem STR stereo preamp with an Anthem MCA 225 amplifier, and he's using a pair of KEF LS50 with a pair of Golden Ear XXL subwoofers. He only uses streaming sources. Okay. Pandora, Spotify, and Tidal, and he prefers to queue up his music on his iPhone. So he wants a wireless connection to his 2-channel rig. He's been using an Audio Engine B100 Bluetooth adapter. It's been working fine, but whenever he mentions his setup to any vendors or experts, they all scream at him that he must stop using Bluetooth. It's just not true, but go on. He's been pointed to the Iriz G1 network streamer for $2,500. Or the NAD C658 network streamer, which is a paltry $1,650 as the value choice.
Yes, the NAD is the value choice, a mere $1,650.
All right. He already tried a Blue Sound Node 2i, which is $500, which worked with AirPlay, but he returned it because he couldn't hear any difference between that and his existing Bluetooth setup. Do we think he should honestly spend the money on the network streamers that have been recommended to him? He could afford either one, but he questions their value. He's in a 16 by 20 foot room, and most of his listening time occurs when he's pedaling his exercise bike. So there's background noise on top of all this. Wow. He's got good speakers.
Very good speakers.
He's got more amplification than he'll ever need.
All of his equipment is top notch.
Yes, he's and this is your problem. I'll be honest with you. This is your problem. You should buy more crappy equipment because then people won't try to sell you $2,500 streamers because they're like, oh, this guy's got.
Yeah, if you had $60 a pair speakers, no subwoofers, and some 20-watt per channel amplifier, then they'd be like, yeah, I guess Bluetooth is fine.
Man, if you were listening in a dead silent room, I don't think you could hear the difference between your $2,500 one and the one you currently own. Honestly, if it was dead silent and it was anechoic, I don't think you would hear the difference. But let's go on. Okay, he's 68 and doesn't have any serious hearing loss, but of course he doesn't believe he hears as well as a 20-year-old anymore. So what's the opinion of someone like us who isn't looking to sell him something? I'll sell you stuff. What
you have
buy?
100%
clearly the man's got money.
Answered your own question, in my opinion, which is that you tried something that does AirPlay. AirPlay is lossless. All right. I mean, your streaming sources, other than Tidal, are not necessarily lossless. Those are coming in at high bitrate MP3 or high bitrate AAC. There is some loss in the source to begin with, and then
and Pandora in particular is kind of garbo, to be honest with you. As someone who listens to Pandora almost at this point, pretty much exclusively because of ease of use. I love Pandora, but it doesn't sound that great, especially in the bass. It's so bad.
But I mean that's what's coming in, and then if you were to then send those sources via AirPlay, there is no further loss. AirPlay is lossless to the source that has come in. Now you tried that with AirPlay with a device that actually costs more to give you AirPlay than is necessary, but hey, that's fine. You gave it a try and returned it because you couldn't hear the difference between that and your current Bluetooth setup. To me, that answers the question. You're done because these very expensive network streamers are not going to sound any better than the situation you had with AirPlay. AirPlay is lossless to the sources that are coming in. That's as good as the signal gets. There's no further to go. They're not going to sound any better than that Blue Sound Node 2i that you tried.
Oh, but they can upconvert to 96 kilohertz. Sure. 128 or whatever it is, 190 something. Yeah, of course, I 100% agree with Rob. 192, I think that's what it is. Anyways, first of all, I don't know what Bluetooth streamer you have, but if you have, it is the aptX codec.
Well,
is the one that's basically CD quality.
iPhones don't do aptX. So you're doing the iPhone version of Bluetooth, which, I mean, there is, objectively, there is further loss happening to your signal by sending it via Bluetooth from your iPhone, right? There's the loss that already occurred from Pandora or Spotify's lossy stream coming in. There's that loss. And then there is objectively some additional loss happening by using Bluetooth from your iPhone. But in the situation you've described and to your own ears, lossless via AirPlay versus some tiny amount of extra loss versus Bluetooth, you heard no difference.
Right. I mean, that should tell you something. Yeah. That should tell you pretty much everything you know. And honestly, I don't think this has anything to do with the age of your ears. I don't think that, especially with an exercise bike going in the background, anyone is going to be able to tell the difference between Bluetooth and AirPlay in your situation, even with Tidal. Right. I just don't believe it. It's a bit
like listening in your car, right?
Yeah.
There's that background noise.
Oh, I love Pandora in my car. I sort of can't stand it when I'm listening to it on the computer. I mean, it's fine if I'm like writing or doing something else and it's just kind of playing in the background. But if I'm really listening, I'm like, wow, that bass drum sounds interesting.
So I mean, at most, what I would, if someone were just like, it bothers me to no end that I'm using Bluetooth, I just can't accept it, I would say, you know what, get an Apple TV.
Yeah,
because that'll do AirPlay and if you can get one of the older ones that has an optical audio output, because the new ones don't have an optical audio output, they only have HDMI, and your Anthem stereo preamp, it has optical inputs but doesn't have HDMI. If you could get one of the older Apple TVs that has an optical output, or even one of the old Airport Express routers that had an optical audio output and supports AirPlay. And you can get those refurbished directly from Apple for a pretty cheap price these days, those Airport Expresses.
Right.
So, I mean, that would do it. And if you're just like, well, I want to get the newest Apple TV that only has HDMI, you could get an HDMI audio extractor for not very much money. And so, I mean, AirPlay would be your solution.
You would still save about $2,200 over what they're expecting. I mean, that's like you getting an Apple TV 4K and an audio extractor, and you're still like, way
you're under $250. You're an order of magnitude less expensive.
Yes. So
but honestly, in your case, just keep using the Bluetooth, because you tried AirPlay already and you didn't hear a difference, and that's the end of it.
Yeah. So he says he's running Golden Ear subs in stereo mode. You sort of say to run dual subs in mono. Why is that? We've explained this a number of times, and I want to say, first of all, in your situation, this may not be apropos, and the reason being is you may depending on how you place them, which I imagine that you've placed them directly under the
probably
speakers.
I'm picturing his KEF LS50s directly on top of, or maybe they're on stands and the subs are directly beside his stereo speaker.
That's what I imagine too. So that's probably why you've run them in stereo mode, because you're thinking of them as one complete.
Plus, I'm not sure. I can't recall if that Anthem stereo preamp has a subwoofer output, or whether it.
That would be the other guess of mine, is that
just
you
has left-right
don't
outputs.
Really have. Yeah, you just have left-right. So the reason why we say to run them in mono is because bass within your room is a single entity. It goes between every speaker that is playing the bass in your room and the room itself. All work together to create the experience of bass.
Yeah,
in
if
your
you had
room.
no walls,
Therefore,
if you were in a wide open field, then stereo bass.
Sure.
Well, we still don't hear deep bass in stereo because our ears just aren't far enough apart for us to do that.
Right.
But outside of a room, there could be some separation theoretically, although our ears can't really hear it. But inside of a room, the bass sound waves are so long that you are never ever hearing a direct path from the subwoofer straight to your ear. That path is too short for the bass sound wave to have even formed. The bass sound wave is so long that it guaranteed has gone to the wall behind you and back and forth a few times before you ever hear it.
So, for example, a 20 hertz wave, say that you're going to see that you've got some sort of 20 hertz tone that's going on in one of your songs or whatever you're watching on your Excite bike thing. It's like 55 feet long.
20 hertz is about 55 feet long, yeah.
Yeah, so in your room, which is, you said 20 feet, right? It's going to almost it's bouncing 3 times the long length of your room, almost, before that wave completes. And
you might be like,
cycle.
I'm only listening to music. There's probably nothing at 20 hertz, but 40 hertz, an octave above that, where there are definitely some instruments playing at 40 hertz, that would be half of that length, right? So we're talking 22 and a half feet long. It's still longer, that 40 hertz sound wave, than longest dimension of your room. You are never hearing a sound that went in a straight line from the subwoofer to your ear. It has always bounced off of, in your case, multiple surfaces, ceiling, floor, sidewalls. It's bounced off of all of those. And when you have 2 subwoofers playing in a room like that, their sound waves are interacting with one another as both of their sound waves bounce off the walls and that. And the reason we say to do it in mono is because that keeps the sound wave pattern more consistent for your...
between the 2 subs, and therefore as they bounce around the room, which means that you can then predict mathematically how the sound waves are going to interact. Now, if you have them playing in stereo, and this one's like, oh well, I have a little bit, I'm not playing this note, and the other sub is, well, then suddenly the predictions of what we expect to happen around the room changes. By having them both playing the same thing at the same time all the time, we can say, okay, if we place them in such a way, this will give us, certain interactions within the room that gives us the best sound. And your ears can't hear stereo bass anyways, therefore you might as well try to get the best bass you can hear, and that's having the best.
The short answer of why is that it's more consistent, more predictable, and more uniform than stereo bass, which you can't really hear because your ears aren't far enough apart anyway.
There you go. All right, Ben. Ben would like our comments on his plans for the small dedicated home theater he's putting together. The room is 12 by 16 by 8 and will be fully dedicated to being a theater. They're not going to have any identity crisis there. And there's one window that he can fully black out. He's already reached out to GIK for some free acoustic treatment advice. While he's waiting to hear back from them, he already had it in his mind to install corner bass traps, panels at the first reflection points on the side walls, and some type of treatment on the back wall. Would we recommend anything more? Carpet?
Sure.
A couple of more panels, maybe behind the front speakers, if you're not having them wall mounted, or
and
whatever.
Potentially some diffusion, possibly on the ceiling, possibly on the side walls. It's a little bit tough because when it comes to really dialing in acoustic treatments, right? We like to start with the basics that are almost universal. I mean, in anything that's considered an acoustically small space, which your room certainly would be at 12 by 16 by 8, you can almost not have too much. Like it's pretty hard. You can make a room very, very dead, I suppose. But it's pretty hard to have too much. So there are some things that we feel very comfortable as almost universal. And that's exactly what you've said, right? Some absorption behind you, some corner bass traps, some sidewalls for the first reflections. And that's a good starting point that will work in almost any acoustically small space and make an improvement. From there to tell what would actually benefit you in some way, you kind of need to measure. Because we don't know exactly what kind of decay times you have in your treble versus your bass. That's going to be room and equipment and positionally dependent. So you kind of need to measure after this starting point. I think your starting point is really good. And if you want to go even further, you'd want to measure before making the decision of what to do next.
I basically put them kind of spaced out aesthetically in a way that pleases me. And, in as many as I could put in here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys can hear the echoes in this room, but they don't exist. So this is my home theater. This is what it sounds like when I'm in here talking at full volume.
If you do the rule of thumb of about 30% of your total surface area, so take the full surface area, floor, ceiling, four walls, if about 30% of that is covered in absorptive stuff, and another 20% on top of that, it could also be like doubled up, but another 20% is diffusive, you'll almost certainly have very nice sounding acoustics in that room. That would be.
And I don't really have anything diffusive in here. I guess not really, and it's fine. All right, he wants a 7.2.4 Atmos configuration. One row of seats, maybe.
One row of seats. You only
get one row of seats to get to 7.
I don't know if he's planning on more than one row of seats. It's only 16 feet to begin with. So.
Dual SVS PB2000s, PB2000s?
That'll definitely take care.
2 row. Well, that's what you're sitting on.
No question.
Denon X6500H to power everything. He's strongly considering the Outlaw Audio LCR2 up front with their BLS V2 bookshelf speakers as surrounding backs, but the Outlaw speakers are rated at 4 ohms. Will the X6500H be able to power them all by themselves? You're gonna be able to almost touch these things. So yeah.
Oh yeah, and Audioholics measured these things, and while the first of all, while the LCR V2s are rated at 4 ohms, and they do dip down to 4 ohms, they're not a particularly difficult speaker to drive, and at your given distances, it would have no problem. But on top of that, if you activate their boundary compensation switch, because they have one of those on the Outlaw audio speakers, they have a boundary compensation switch. If you do that, it actually raises the nominal impedance level. And I'm assuming these speakers are not going to be way far away from the walls, because how could they be in a 12 by 16 foot room? So if you activate that boundary compensation switch, they become very easy to drive, and the BLS already are regardless. So no concerns about power. I'm not sure how you landed on the Outlaws exactly. I don't have any particular qualms with them. They've gotten positive reviews. If those are the ones you want, because you're
I haven't heard them,
a
so I can't
fan
tell you
of sealed speaker design or something like that, they look perfectly fine. They were designed by what's his name? I forget his first name. Dapolito, his last name.
Oh. Yeah.
So, I mean, he came out of retirement. They brought him out of retirement, and they had him design a speaker for them. So, fine speaker design. If you want something that's actually
someone needed a new boat,
quite similar but $100 cheaper, you could look at NHT's C series, which is their top of the line series. NHTs. I prefer the NHT C center to just laying one of the Outlaws horizontally. Because even in the Audioholics review, they pointed out, like, if you just lay this thing horizontally, it definitely changes the frequency response and dispersion pattern, because it's just a Dapolito array as we would expect from a speaker designed by the man himself, and just turning it horizontally doesn't really turn it into a perfectly matched center. So,
I mean,
yeah.
If he's planning on, I mean, I don't know how he could possibly do this, but if he's planning on having 3 perfectly matched speakers up front and like some sort of acoustically transparent screen to put behind, I guess I don't see how he's going to be able to do that. But yeah, I mean, if you're dead set on these speakers, knock yourself out.
I'm not going to tell you that it's certainly not a bad choice. Yeah.
I do not think the PB 2000s
are necessary. The PB or
well,
SB
they're definitely not necessarily.
Could be super nice in here.
I would go if you're dead set on the 2000 series. I would go SB or PC. I would not go PB. The cylinders, fine, knock yourself out. The SB, fine, they're small. You do not understand how big those PBs are. Any of the PBs, any of the ported boxes,
even the 1000s,
they are bigger than you think they are. Yeah, so I would go the PCs if you want a ported box, or an SB if you're coming to your senses and realizing you'd like to actually have some chairs.
All right.
So I do not agree with that. The Denon's fine. I mean, it seems like it's a little overkill for what you need, but
if he wants to power 11 speakers with just the AV receiver, then that's a great choice. That's the one.
All right, in-ceiling Atmos speakers. He isn't sure which ones. Any suggestions? I mean, we've talked. I guess the Outdoor Speaker Depot no longer has the ones.
They don't have the ones that I like anymore, which is sad, and that's why I've looked for an alternative, and I found one that I'm willing to recommend. Now, this would be the cheapo choice. All right, this is $100 for a pair of them, and that's Mono Prices. In particular, their Sycamore series, which is a new series for them. But it has the highest end drivers that Monoprice is using out of any of their given in-ceiling options. And they're a nice design, completely reasonable. I have zero qualms about recommending them as Atmos speakers. They will be completely fine. And so for a low entry-level price, the Monoprice Sycamore I can highly suggest. Now, if you're going for these Outlaw Audio, or if you switched over to the NHT that I mentioned, the C series, you might want something a little bit more upmarket. I don't know if you want to spend more or not. It's really not necessary for Atmos speakers, I would say, but maybe it is. Now, NHT, of course, sells their own in-ceiling speakers, so that would be a match there. But I could also point you to AVRant. AVRant's in-ceiling speakers are a nice, reasonable price that you can easily get a hold of. If you don't like them, you can send them back for free because they pay shipping both ways, and that would be a solution there too.
All right, he's thinking the JVC X790 with 110-inch 2.35:1 screen. As mentioned, he can black out the room, and dark room viewing is the priority, but he has it in mind that he would still like to be able to watch TV with some ambient light. It doesn't have to look perfect in the ambient light, but he's hoping to be watchable. Stewart's Film Scream's online tool recommended their Greyhawk G4 screen to him. What are our thoughts? I think you should get a white screen and mostly keep the lights off.
Yeah, I mean, if you're saying you're going to have a completely blacked out room and dark room viewing is the priority, man, you get a white screen. Yeah. Will it be a bit washed out in ambient light? Yeah, it will. There's no avoiding that with a white screen. It'll get a bit washed out.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, that's absolutely true. There's no other way to describe it. If my door is open and they have lights out and it's dark at night and they have lights out on in there, even if it's not direct light, the light on the screen washes out whatever it touches. That's just the way it works. But you know what? That's not the way you're normally going to be watching it. So you buy for what you watch. You don't buy for the off chance that you might sometimes have some ambient light.
Yeah, it's tough.
Room.
I mean,
I would 100% go for a white screen.
I mean that is my top recommendation. I understand where he's coming from. It's a bit of this wanting to have it all, and that's a tough situation. Actually, there was some fairly good demonstrations of we mentioned Carl's Place last week. That's a DIY where you can get, and they have a white screen, which is great. They have a gray screen, which is just a gray screen, and then they have a high gain gray screen that they call their ambient light rejecting. And there's been some pretty good comparisons that have been done on YouTube and that just showing it and talking about it, where they're like, yeah, there's compromises when you get that ambient light rejecting screen, because while the black level with ambient light does look deeper and the contrast does look higher, when you're in pitch blackness, if you put it next to the white screen, there is detail missing. There is just detail missing, and the white looks gray in comparison. Now, when you don't have them side by side, you might not notice as much, but I'm like, when darkroom viewing is your priority, you got to go with the white screen. Maybe you get a little bit of gain, like a 1.2 or something.
All right, Terry. Terry has a JVC RS540, which is the same as the X790 that our last dude was talking about, mounted on the shelf on his rear wall along with a battery backup. When he's using it in low lamp mode, it's completely fine, but low lamp mode is a bit dim for HDR, so he prefers the look of HDR using the high lamp mode, but then the fan noise is louder. It isn't the end of the world. When the movie soundtrack is playing, he doesn't hear the fan, even in high lamp mode, but during quiet passages, he can notice the fan, and he's hoping to improve that. Does he really need to completely seal the projector inside of a hush box? Could some sort of partial box work well enough to reduce the fan noise? It doesn't need to be dead silent. Dude, it does need to be dead silent, because if not, you're going to complain about it, because you already started complaining about it. It's sound. Yeah. So if you put a barrier between you and the sound, it will deaden it somewhat.
Sure.
But there is no getting around the fact that sound is like water. And I always think of that Bruce Lee movie, be like the nature of water, whatever it is. So it will make its way to you. It may be slightly deadened, but it's going to make its way to you. So you will need a hush. If you really want it to be quiet, you got to put it in a hush
And
box.
Unfortunately, the issue with the design of the RS540, same as the X790, is that there are two vents on the front to either side of the lens, and those are the exhaust vents, and that is where most of the sound is coming out. And that means you'd have to, in some way, either cover or baffle the front of this projector, which is the most difficult thing to do, right? I mean, I've seen plenty of people just build kind of like a soffit. It's a false soffit, but build like a soffit and sort of nestle their projector in there. But unfortunately, with a projector designed like the JVC, that doesn't really help your noise problems very much unless you have covered the front as well, because
which you don't want to do, because that's where the exhaust is anyways. You need to let that needs to be able to breathe.
Not only do you need a large hush box to go around this, or in fact, I mean, I'm looking at his setup and I'm like, I could conceive of maybe just putting in a false soffit to do that, but the airflow that you would have to consider is quite complicated, because you need to make sure. So first of all, the JVC is drawing air in from the back and its bottom. That's where its inlets are the back and its bottom. And then it's exhausting out of both sides. So you'd need to put in some kind of, like airflow channels to get that exhaust air away, but make sure that it doesn't find its way back to the inlets, because you wouldn't want to just be exhausting the hot air back into the inlets, which a closed hush box would kind of do, unless you build a fairly complicated, system. You could, in a way, instead of having to put in some like Edmunds optical glass over the lens, you could actually leave the lens forward and just put in some kind of physical baffles around the side exhaust vents rather than covering the whole front of the projector. But, we're getting into some not super simple building here.
Right.
Dear.
So he's come across some mass-loaded vinyl when looking up soundproofing materials. Should he just make a simple box and line the inside of it with that? It is just so much more complicated than that. You need, like Rob was saying, airflow. But once you start talking about a box of the type that you're going to need for this, in order to quiet it down as much as you're sort of recommending, you got to think about glass. I mean, you really do, because you want to have enough space in front of the vents so that the air can flow and then you need the air to be able to get away and more air to be pulled in. So therefore, you're going to need a piece of glass in front of this in order for it to shine through and it still be sealed.
Like I say, you could theoretically build a more complex box where you're leaving the lens open and just channeling away the two exhaust vents on the side. But, that's a more complicated build. I mean, golly.
So if he leaves the recommended...
the mass-loaded vinyl thing is kind of neither here nor there. I mean, you could just do the 2 layers of drywall with some green glue in between. That would probably be the most soundproof that you could make. Mass-loaded vinyl isn't anything spectacular. It's exactly what the name says. It's vinyl with additional mass. It's just heavy vinyl. That's all it is. Yeah.
All right. So if he leaves the recommended space around the all sides of the projector, the hush box will be huge. That's what we're saying. And it needs to be vented. I guess it's your
and have inlets. I mean, air has to get in to the bottom and the back and then exhaust out the front.
He was thinking maybe he could put a second shelf below the projector and have the hush box supported by that. Is this all just too elaborate to the point where he's just live with the noise?
Yeah, that's kind of the way.
I'll tell you what. Let me put you this way. Are you willing to pay a professional to build this hush box for you? Because if you're willing to pay a professional to build this hush box for you, whatever that cost might be, and you can go ahead and get a price for it from somebody, is that worth getting rid of this noise? Or would you rather keep the money and just live with the noise? Because that's really what it comes down to. This is not, hey, I'm just going to throw something, like some material underneath my shelf, and then they'll somehow make this noise go away. It's way more than that. It's quite a bit of engineering on top of it. So hush boxes are no small thing, which is why when somebody comes to this podcast and say, "Oh, I want to buy this projector," it's $750, and we look at it, we're like, "Yeah, it's going to be loud," and they're like, "We don't care." I'm like, "You say that?"
Yeah, I mean. Honestly, I instead of a hush box, just aesthetically for the purposes of this room, I would probably suggest the soffit solution. Like I say, you could either have the glass over the lens, or you could build it such that it's channeling away. I mean, you could have large, like if you don't want to actually have forced air coming in the back somehow and some way of exhausting the air out of it, I would have several large fans sort of bringing air in from the bottom back area to bring air in and then exhaust. You could have channels that move the air away from the fronts out to the sides and then exhaust it, somewhere out the sides of the soffit. I mean, to me, a soffit would be probably easier to construct and look a lot better than just a very large hush box surrounding this whole thing. Yeah. I think the soffit would actually make more sense, and it would give you more opportunity to channel the air away from where the inlets are. So if you're going to do it, that's the way I would do it. It's not a simple thing. I would probably just live with the noise.
Yeah, and so we just talked about the last one, but I would pay a professional to do this for you. I would not try to do it myself. All right, DJ. DJ's theater room is 11.5 by 18 by 7.5 high. He's got 2 rows of recliners, and his back row is his primary row. It's on a 10-inch riser, and it's 12 feet from the screen. He started with NHT Super Series speakers, Super 1s up front, and Super 0 surrounds. One of his front speakers stopped working, so he began imagining how he would eventually upgrade all of his speakers. He got in mind that he'd go all B&W, and he started by getting a B&W center, but now he wants to go back to the very neutral speakers like his NHT Super Series speakers, but better than what he's got. So he wants to upgrade, but he doesn't want to have the signature sound of B&W, which they do have, and they will tell you that they have, and we're not making that up. All right. Each of his front speakers is in a cabinet opening. He's lined all the surfaces with foam and then covered the front with a grill cloth. Everything is powered by a Denon X6300H, and a pair of SVS PB2000s take care of the bass. So, all right.
Tom is looking at images.
What?
So we got these nice 2 rows of recliners. Very nice. 3 seats in the back, 2 in the front. And he has made his back row the primary row. He's got a nice large projector on a shelf on the back wall that's going on there. He's got wall-mounted surrounds and surround backs and in-ceiling Atmos speakers overhead. And then up front, behind the screen when he's got it exposed. So normally he has fabric over the speaker so he doesn't see any of these speakers up front. But below his screen and to the left and right of his screen, he's built these sort of cubbies with foam lining all of those, and he's put these speakers in. So I'm assuming that's part of why he chose NHT. They are a sealed design that can go into a cabinet like that without worrying about rear-facing ports or anything like that. So that's sort of the starting position.
All right, so how much would it cost for him to get a substantial improvement in sound quality? What would some of the speakers we'd recommend to him, and at what price point? So you're looking for neutral. So we talk neutral all the time on this podcast, so it's not that hard. The question is, how dedicated are you to having them all stuck on the wall the way that you have them? Because it's very strange.
Well, it's not that odd to have.
It makes for a very, very clean look,
yes,
which I think is what he's sort of going for, and I totally.
But it
totally
does,
get
in
that.
my opinion, restrict some of your speaker choices because you wouldn't probably want rear-ported speakers, which is a lot of speakers are rear-ported speakers.
Yeah, a lot of speakers are going to be rear-ported, and they are completely off the table in this sort of design. So rather than having the back of it be all foam, completely filled in with foam, giving an air pocket back there, and then putting the speaker grill cloth over the entire, I guess, whatever the wall or whatever you're doing up there, could increase the number of speakers that we could recommend to you.
But by the same token, there are options that we can recommend, and I don't particularly mind that. There are still really good options. I want to address first, though, because, I mean, clearly what he's saying is he wants a sound upgrade. Are his speakers the limiting factor? Right, that's what I want to question. Now, we're looking at the rest of the room here. It doesn't look like he has a ton of acoustic treatment. I don't think those posters are acoustic panels.
Right. I don't see. I mean, unless those are those fabric wrap panels that he got
don't
before
think they
started. They started cranking down on copyright.
But at the same time, there's nothing in this room where I'm going, oh, well, the room is clearly like a bad acoustic space. This isn't, to me, doesn't look like a bad acoustic space. Maybe not.
No, he's got carpet down. He's got these recliners could be leather.
No, those look like suede, microfiber. They definitely look like the microfiber. Yeah.
So I mean,
and he's got treatments up
treatments
front.
Could be an issue.
He's got
so he's sitting 12 feet away from the NHT Super Series ones.
Yeah,
which I don't know, exactly what their specs are, but I mean that.
There are speaker upgrades to that. Yeah. So, I mean, I think you're right in that zone because, I mean, he has done some acoustic treatment to this room, primarily up front. But, there's diffusion at the back. There's soft chairs. There's carpet here. So I do think that a speaker upgrade could actually be something you could discern in this room where it's not going to be masked by the acoustics of this room. I mean, to me, the easiest one is to say, you already know you like the neutrality of the NHT Super Series. Why not go to NHT's top-of-the-line C Series? I mentioned that before in a previous question, but, those are like the NHT C Series center is $500, and then it's $1,000 for the pair of the bookshelf three-ways. Those are all a sealed design that would easily go into your setup. They'd slot right in, and it's an upgrade within the NHT family. Like the least
a lot of people want to go for a different brand though when they want to go for an upgrade.
It could be. The least expensive ones I might recommend here would be like Ascend's HTM 200 SEs at $300 a pair, but I would consider them personally an upgrade over the NHT Super Series, but not very much.
Not huge.
Not very much at all. Huge.
I would look at some of the high mid-level maybe to higher end, depending on what your budget ends up being, to RBH.
Sure.
RBH would be my go-to. I'm looking for a neutral speaker, and I want it to be good. They're like, well, how good do you want it to be? Because the more you spend, the better it gets here. It's not like you're paying for finishes.
But 4 speakers from RBH that would work well in this sort of cabinet setting, and they have some, so it's not that they don't have any, but I would probably point you either to their on-walls, because the on-walls can go in a cabinet like this, no problem. They've got their signature 661Ws, which are $900 a piece. Right, each, or if you went for the upgraded ones with the folded ribbon tweeter, those get up to $1,350 a piece. They also do have in their signature series their actual cabinet speakers, like a sealed, regular-looking speaker design, but the cabinet one in the signature series, and those go for $1,250 each. So that's the type of price range you'd be looking at for the Signature series from RBH. Along those lines, you could consider Kef, because Kef has a sealed model in their R series. It would be the R2C. That's the only sealed one, but you get 3 of those, and that'll easily work. And that's the concentric design with the tweeter right in the middle of the mid-range driver, which will work excellently in this type of setup. But those are $1,200 each. So similar price range to RBH's. You could also consider in that same sort of price range the options from Ascend in their Sierra lineup. They have the front-ported models or the sealed models. Just front-ported. But you got front-ported models from Ascend like the Horizon, which with its normal tweeter is $1,000 each, or with the upgraded ribbon tweeter is $1,350 each. So right in that same price range as the RBH's. So that could be the price range you're considering. If that's too expensive, I would either point you to the NHTC series, which is like half the price. It's $500 each instead of $1,000 each. There's also Aperion's new Novus series, which is their middle series, which are a front slot ported design. So that could also work, and those are the same price range as the NHTC series. Those are $500.
Are they still are they using that same tweeter from the Varus?
I'm not sure if it's exactly the same, but it's very much a similar design. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can get behind that. I haven't heard those yet. I'm really sort of miffed with Aperion for their stupid super tweeter.
I know.
Pushing.
Just the fact that they even offer it makes us dislike them a little bit.
I know. It's like immediately you just got downgraded. If some speaker manufacturer said, Tom, here you're not as happy with Aperion anymore, would you like to have our speakers instead? My answer would probably be yes. No, my answer would be, do you sell a super tweeter? Because if you don't, then I could be on board. Do you sell anything else stupid like that? So, yeah, these are all good prices. So, I mean, it depends on really what your budget is, but anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a pair. And it's weird that these things kind of work out that, or each, I'm sorry, work out this way. But they really kind of do. The $1,000 a pair price point, or $1,000 each price point is is sort of a break point, where you see a lot of speaker manufacturers trying to hit that so that they can,
and that's a lot of
because a lot of people are willing to
flagships or that type of price, like $1,000 to $1,500 for each individual speaker. That's like flagship performance, and above that you start getting into like more esoteric stuff where it's more about looks or about a particular character to the sound. Like you start getting into sort of, and the it's like exponential price increases above that point. So
it's strange, but it's true. It is true. A lot of times you can take that same speaker at that $1,000 each speaker and make it more expensive by getting a custom finish or something like that. But as far as when we were doing shootouts, we would do $1,500 shootouts, we do $1,000 shootouts, we do $500 shootouts, we do $2,000 shootouts for a pair. But we ended up like rolling in the $1,500 to the $2,000 because that range was all about the same quality. Right. So $1,500 to $2,000 a pair is about the same quality. $750 to $1,000 a pair is about, they're all trying to hit the same price point. Some of them are undercutting the others. And then the $500 a pair is a similar price point. So I mean, it's obviously but similar quality. So having to jump from one to another, it seems like a huge amount of money that's different, but it's all about what speaker manufacturers have found that people are willing to spend. If you're looking for a speaker and you look at a $500 speaker and say this isn't good enough for me, you're not looking at a $600 speaker. You're looking at a $1,000 speaker. That's just how you jump. So let us know what you get, and try to hear as many of these as you can. Aperion will pay both ways the shipping, so that's kind of a no-brainer. RBH can be kind of hard to get a hold of, but as far as getting a listen to them beforehand, if you don't live in the big city, but maybe you will.
Kef you could probably find at a store somewhere because there's lots of Kef dealers.
Lots of Kef dealers, that's true. All right, Victor. Victor is constructing his dedicated home theater and doing all the work himself. God love you, man. Do you want to help me pull up a deck? About done with this thing. I don't want to ever go out there again. The finished room will be 21 by 13 by 7 feet high, just under 2,000 cubic feet. He's planning on 2 rows of seats with a 125-inch acoustically transparent screen and a JVC X790 projector, both of which he has already purchased. Okie dokie. So, the 790, apparently a popular model today. He was planning on having the first row of seats 12 feet from the screen and the second rows elevated on a riser and approximately 16 feet from the screen. He is planning on fully acoustically treating the room, including a skyline diffuser at the rear of the room. He plans to use in-wall speakers up front with all 3 speakers behind the screen. So, any suggestions regarding the layout and distances, particularly for how far off the front wall, the acoustically transparent screen should go? He already bought the screen.
You already bought the screen, which is it's
the
okay.
125 is
I
done.
don't know if that's 2.35 to 1 or 16 by 9, because the 125 is often 2.35 to 1. So it might be.
Okay, so he wants in-wall speakers, but why? I mean, I guess he's going to mount them in the wall of his acoustically transparent wall.
I think he's mounting them in the actual constructed wall and just thinking that will allow him to put the acoustically transparent screen that much closer to the actual front wall and give himself more distance to his seating. But I mean, I would work in reverse. So, okay, so first of all, the skyline diffuser, I mean, that's okay. I'm assuming it's something that he's going to DIY and thinks it just looks cool. Having it behind you is okay. I would normally have thick absorption on the back wall. That's my preference.
Right. Usually, skyline diffuser tells you where it should go, which is above you.
There is that. I mean, it's also just the name of the design of the thing with the multiple different heights of little blocks of wood that you put together. If you're going to make the skyline diffuser, I would put it over some absorption. I would still have absorption on the back wall, and then the skyline diffuser could go over it so that you're still getting bass trapping on that back wall itself and then the diffusion. So that's fine. That's just a little tangent. But I would work backwards. I mean, I would have 3 feet from your back wall to the back of your back row of seats. Saying that you're going to have the first row at 12 feet and the second row at 16 feet, that's not enough distance between the 2 rows.
Yeah, you need like 5,
right? 5.5.
5.5,
I would call the minimum. 6 feet is nice and comfortable. 5.5 is fine. So I would say 3 feet off your back wall. So we went from 21 feet to 18 feet now, okay, to the front wall. I would go 5.5 feet from that 18 feet being the back of your back row to 5.5 feet in front of that being the back of your front row, right?
Row.
Yep, that's right. And so now, what is that? Leaving us 18 minus 12 and a half. 11 and a half feet, right? No, 12 and a half feet. So he's got 12 and a half feet from his front row to the physical front wall now. Now, with a 125-inch screen, I would personally like, even if it's 2.35 to 1, I would personally like the distance from the front row to that screen to be 11 or 11 and a half feet. Depends on what type of screen size you like, but you were in that range. So we're talking about a distance from the physical front wall to your screen being 1 to 1.5 feet, which is very reasonable. That's very, very reasonable. Sure. Now, that's actually enough depth from the physical front wall to your acoustically transparent screen being 1 to 1.5 feet that you could put regular speakers back there. I mean, maybe not super deep towers, but that's probably not what you're considering anyway. I don't think you actually need to go in-wall speakers back there behind your screen. Maybe on wall, and you could actually refer to our last question for some great suggestions of sealed and or on wall options that could work really, really nicely here without you having to put big holes in your actual wall construction. I'm not the biggest fan of in-wall speakers because you always have to put a big hole in your wall and you can't move them. You can't adjust them.
Don't like them.
I know.
You know what I mean? You can't aim them. You can't move them. You know, you're now stuck with putting them where the bays are in the walls. And yes, he's constructing this himself, but I'm telling you, you're not thinking about all the places you actually want to put.
I mean, if you're
things.
constructing this yourself, that I assume building a false wall to hold your acoustically transparent screen and some fabric is no problem. And if it's a foot,
well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, if you're gonna build a false wall anyways. Why not just install the in-wall speakers in the false wall?
I see.
You know, behind the fabric that you're.
Oh, yeah. So
using.
You just put up some framing. You put the in-wall speakers there. Although you definitely want to have backer boxes. Well, you want to have backer boxes regardless. So either way, you want to have backer boxes. You could do that, but I mean, you could also just do regular speakers. You'll have enough space if you go with our plan. Yeah.
Right. All right. So he has a rough budget around $3,000 for his front three speakers, but he's willing to go higher or lower to get the best bang for the buck. In terms of what is easily available to him locally, he has whittled down his in-wall front speakers choices to Paradigm, Triad, Monitor Audio, or Speakercraft.
I know.
One of these things is not like the other, but he is open to other suggestions, although he says he's not interested in Polker Klipsch.
All right.
So would we recommend one of the 4 options he's listed, or would we recommend something else? Do you know the dude who lives in Nova Scotia and apparently is swimming in Paradigm? Because if you don't, then I would recommend something else.
I mean, I could get behind Paradigm, no problem.
Monitor Audio, I don't hate.
That'd be
I'm
fine.
Not a fan of Triad.
I wouldn't go Speakercraft.
Speakercraft.
Triad is...
Oh my God, that picture I took of their booth at CDO, where it was just this massive, massive booth. Big sign that says, "Our margins beat all other margins." I'm like, you guys are slimy. But, I mean, hey, I guarantee you, every home that has a pre-installed home theater has Speakercraft speakers
heavens,
in it,
yes.
because they overcharge.
I mean, out of the 4 you mentioned, I would probably lean Paradigm. That would probably be my choice.
Yeah.
If it has to be one of those 4, I would refer you right back to our previous question.
To the last question. Yeah.
KEF, Ascend,
RBH,
NHT, they all have excellent choices. AVRant as well. They all have excellent options.
And if you're putting them behind the wall, then, if they're full speakers, then you could go with like the RBH bookshelves and save tons of money.
Yeah.
Tons of money.
Yup. That's the way I'm looking.
So he asked, should he stick with the same manufacturer for his surrounds and overheads? I mean,
if it's RBH or KEF, easily, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They got lots of options. That if you want to go on wall and slim, they've got options for that, because RBH has the Ultra ones or the Signature Series on walls. KEF has their T Series if you want something ridiculously slim, or they have other on wall options. Ascend has their HTM 200 SEs or their Sierra Lunas that can be mounted on the walls if you want to go them. So yeah, lots of options. AVRant has in ceilings, RBH has in ceilings, KEF has in ceilings. So sure, keep it within the family.
So he's planning on a 7.2.4 speaker configuration. Will probably pre-wire for 2 pairs of side surround speakers plus front wides and 6 overhead, since it's easy and cheap to run speaker wires while the walls are open. Do we think he should use in-wall and in-ceiling speakers for all positions?
I wouldn't if you could avoid it. Why put big holes in things? Although 7-foot ceiling, I probably want in-ceiling speakers.
Yeah,
I don't want anything hanging
down. You got to
down.
go in-ceiling.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, I would be looking at those RBH on walls that we were kind of talking about before and just put them everywhere.
Yeah.
Except for the ceiling.
I mean, if you don't want the price of the signature on walls for surrounds and surround backs, then go the Ultras. Go the Ultra ones. That's a much less expensive, very slim, easy to mount on wall. Yeah. And then in ceiling, if you stick with RBH, it's a great choice because they have the full backer cans, which are easy to install but will prevent any sound from leaking out. So that's an easy option. KEF gives you very similar options as well. So I'm kind of leaning one of those. Although, I mean, Paradigm wouldn't be a bad choice at all either. Paradigm has some excellent in-ceiling options with backer can options, and they have on-wall surround options as well. So Paradigm could easily be the choice for you as well.
I mean, if not buying online is sort of your deal, then going with Paradigm would be fine. You're going to pay more. There's just that's just the fact of the matter. But you could still get some very good speakers. So he's leaning towards SVS for dual subwoofers. He already has butt kickers for his theater chair, and he will have 7 seats in total. What sub model would we recommend? I would recommend the PC2000, 2 of them. Thank you very much.
2,000 cubic feet, that'll crush your room. PC2000, SB2000s would also be completely fine.
Yeah. This is not a huge room, and but if you're having by the way, throw away the butt kickers because you're not going to need them, because we're going to crush your room with actual bass, not fake bass that comes from butt kickers.
Well, he's already bought them.
That's just me.
There they are.
Well, I try them with them off, and then try them with them on, and then tell me what you think, because I would like more than just the less than handful of people that have said, I really prefer to have the butt kickers on this podcast to show up and tell me that I'm wrong. But I think they suck. But that's just me. Steve was using a 720. I gotta get some water. I'm like seriously dehydrated here. But anyways, Steve was using a 720p Panasonic plasma TV. Decided to try a 65-inch LG B8 OLED. Thankfully, he loves it. So now the rest of his system can use an upgrade to take advantage of 4K and HDR. He definitely wants to watch Ultra HD Blu-ray discs, but he'd like to keep the price of the player to under $300. This has him leaning towards a Sony X700 or 800 M2. He's aware that the Sony players do not auto-detect Dolby Vision, which is less than ideal, but not a deal breaker for him, so he needs suggestions. I suggest that you get one of those because that's a pretty good price. That's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, just sheer build quality, I like the X800 M2 a little bit better. Because you've got the X700, which is
he didn't like it.
Fine.
He didn't like it too much better. He wanted me to buy the 700 so I could see when I asked him what to buy. He didn't say 800. He said 700.
Well, also the M2 didn't exist at the time, and yeah, the 700 was cheaper, so that's fine. Yeah, I mean in North America or in the United States in particular, those probably are your best choices. And if it's not a deal breaker for you to have to manually do the Dolby Vision thing, then that's fine. I wish the Panasonic UB450 were easily available in the United States because that would be the choice. So Panasonic's lineup, which is readily available in Europe and mostly available in Canada, although you have to hunt around a little bit, but you can find most of them. They had a weird thing because they had the UB420, which had the HDR optimizer, which is the thing that everybody loves, especially for using it with projectors. But the UB420 does not do Dolby Vision. So it's a great choice for pairing with a projector because no projectors do Dolby Vision anyway, and the 420 does have the HDR optimizer, but the lower build quality. Then there's the UB820 in Panasonic's lineup that you can get in the United States, but it's $500, and it does all the things: Dolby Vision, HDR10 Plus, and the HDR optimizer. The UB450 has the features of the UB820 in that it does Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus, but it drops the HDR optimizer. Now, with an LG OLED, I don't think that's any problem because the LG OLED does its own dynamic tone mapping for an HDR10 signal. So you don't really need the HDR optimizer. So that's why the UB450 would be an ideal choice. I don't know, maybe you're close to Canada and you could pop up here and grab one, or you could import a UB450 for not too much money.
Are you guys 120, 60 hertz?
Oh, yeah. Same electricity. Okay. So, yeah, the 450 is my honest answer if you can track one down, but otherwise grab a X800 M2.
Yeah. So he's a big fan of multi-channel music, and 50% of the time, that's what he's using the system for. He's loaded up a QNAP NAS. Network Accessible Storage unit with multi-channel music recordings, and he's using his Oppo 103 Blu-ray player for playback via DLNA. Now that he'll be getting a new disc player, he'd like to upgrade that experience. Using DLNA gives him only a very basic user interface, and it locks up occasionally. Would the DLNA interface, I just want you to get a new one so I don't have to say it anymore, on a new Ultra HD Blu-ray player be any big improvement? Or would we suggest using an NVIDIA Shield? If he were to get an NVIDIA Shield, could he use his app on his iPad to select the content? It seems like Plex.
Yep.
That he should be able to use Plex to do
and
this.
You definitely could.
And everything runs Plex these days, and I'm getting water.
All right, so the question is, he did mention the model of the QNAP NAS that he is using, and I briefly looked at QNAP's website because you can turn many QNAP NAS units into a Plex server itself. You can just load a Plex server app onto the QNAP NAS itself, in which case all you'd need is some sort of Plex playback device to do this, which wouldn't necessarily have to be the NVIDIA Shield. The NVIDIA Shield, what's great about that unit is that it can be both the Plex server and the Plex player, and it's great at doing both. So the NVIDIA Shield could be an excellent choice here, and with the model of the QNAP that he mentioned in his email, I don't think it can run the Plex server. I think it's got one of the lower end ARM processors where they haven't got the Plex server app for that particular model, but double check because it's possible that it does, in which case I might point you to getting an Apple TV 4K just because you've got this great new television, although it has a lot of great streaming apps built already into it. But if you want what, in my opinion, is the best companion streaming app device, that would be the Apple TV 4K, which can run Plex, but can't act as a Plex server the way that the NVIDIA Shield can. So regardless, Plex could definitely be your solution here. You could certainly use the Plex app on your iPad to select your content and then just press the little button to say, send this to my NVIDIA Shield or send this to my Apple TV 4K, or even send it directly to the Plex app that you can get on the LG B8 itself, because the LG B8 has a Plex app that you could use built right into it. So you can certainly do what you want to that way. Would using DLNA on a new Ultra HD Blu-ray player be any big improvement? No, it would not. So, yep, I think Plex is a good solution here. And if you need something that can run the server, then an NVIDIA Shield is a great choice. Perfect timing, Tom.
Yay. Was I right? Was it Plex?
Yeah, Plex could definitely be a solution here, for sure.
All right, good. Wayne on Facebook. We clearly rag on AVS Forum whenever it gets mentioned, so what are some other home theater forums we could suggest for him to frequent?
I mean, I've got a list of some that are alternatives. I mean, we almost started doing question and answer on AVRant as a response to our annoyance.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't recommend, and it's not.
Yeah,
it's not that forums are bad resources, or that people on forums are bad people.
There is terrific information to be found there. The
problem with forums, I find, is that they are an echo chamber, and you don't have to have any actual knowledge to be an echo.
Right.
So what happens is, this is where you find out, separates are always better than receivers. Why? Because people say that separates are better than receivers. Have you had separates? Oh, I've heard them before. Yeah. Was it better? Well, I don't know. It wasn't my system. Okay, so you don't really actually know anything, right? No, but separates are always better than receivers.
Very often gets hyped to the moon.
Oh my God! The time every once in a while, some speaker that's $40 at Best Buy will suddenly become the new thing that everybody has to have. And I'm just like, oh my God. Okay, so I'm gonna be honest with you. Any forum's fine. I have a problem with like AVS is the big forum, so of course
my
it has the most.
Was the civility or lack thereof. I hated the. Someone just posts an honest question and they're like, why are you making a new post for this? This was already answered in this 4,000-page thread. Why didn't you just use the search and find the answer you're looking for? I'm like, that's why I wanted to do question and answer on AVRant, where we're like, ask your question. I don't care if it's been asked before. We'll answer again, because repetition helps, and sometimes things change, and sometimes you have a small detail that's specific to your use case. So that was a response to that. But regardless, we maybe we can just give out some alternatives.
If you love AVS and you're fine with the way that it's run and how things work over there, and you're able to navigate it and filter through all the echoing that happens there, I mean, I don't really think that any other forum is better. It's just an order of magnitude smaller. Therefore, it can be a little bit more. It could be a little bit more civil, but everyone has its issues. So I'm going to say, come here. If you got a question, post it here. You actually get the answer.
There are things that we don't cover or can't get to in the same depth. So, Audioholics, they have a good forum. They've got good people over there. AV forums in the UK, of course, product recommendations and prices will mostly be UK and Europe centric, but just for general discussion. The community feel, the civility of AV forums, I like very much. So that's a good place if you just want to talk about stuff in more general terms instead of specific products and prices. Ascend Acoustics has a very nice, friendly forum, but it's pretty small, so you're not going to get a ton of responses over there. And then, interestingly, AV Science, the retailer, has separated from AVS Forum. Right? It used to be AV Science's forum. That's where the AVS in AVS Forum comes from. It used to be their forum, but the retailer AV Science is separate now from AVS Forum. AVS Forum is its own separate entity, but AV Science, the retailer, has their own forums. So that's another place you can go for some very industry knowledgeable people.
Yeah, when I used to write reviews for Audioholics, I would occasionally end up on one of the websites of the manufacturers I had recommended or I had reviewed, and I would see some questions on the review I'd done, and I would answer them, and I would get absolutely annihilated. Yes. You don't know what you're talking about. That guy, what he was saying was this. I'm like, yeah. since I'm the dude, I'm pretty sure I know what I was saying, and I wouldn't really engage because I had no.
What does it get you?
No good. But invariably, somebody would say, he was the reviewer, right? Everything would quiet down. So that's pretty much the internet as far as I'm concerned. So what we're trying to do is offer an alternative. And yes, you have to sit through a 2-hour podcast.
And sometimes wait a couple of weeks because we are slower than a forum. Yep.
Yeah, we are slower. You can't get your question answered right today. But when you get it answered, it will be thorough. It will be as correct as it can be from our knowledge. And it'll be civil.
Yep.
So, I might give you a hard time. I might
do it out of love.
But it will be good fun, and it'll be for entertainment more than for anything else. And because this is a podcast.
And we'll never tell you.
Other than that,
we'll never tell you use the search. And we already answered this, and go back and listen through 8,000 hours of AVRant because it's in there somewhere. We'll never tell you to do that.
God, I hope you listen. There's people who go back and try to start listening at episode 1 make me Jesus. Every once in a while, I'll get some sort of spam post, some spam email. Oh, what you discussed in episode 234 was very interesting to us. We'd love to buy ad space on your website. Sure you would. Thank you, robot person. Iriz?
I think it's Iriz.
Iriz? With a Z?
Iriz with a Z. That's what I think. I think so.
All right. Iriz. It was almost a year ago when Iriz asked about a speaker upgrade. She was considering a demo pair of JBL Synthesis 4367 speakers. We said to go for the smaller 8-inch JBL Synthesis 4306 from the same series, but as is often the case, she wound up with the bigger ones. Anyways, the 4367s. A 60-watt channel amp is easily powering them to the point where the neighbors are complaining, probably. And she loves them to death, so no regrets. And since Rob has said that the JBL M2s would likely be his cost, no object speaker of choice, he should be able to appreciate that the 4367s are basically the passive version and nearly identical.
Oh, yes. I said at the time, these are knockdown, remarkable, very expensive speakers, and we can see in the setup she is not sitting far away. This is not a gigantic room.
And she pushed them back for the picture because you can see where the tape is on the ground where they actually sit, which is another 3 or 4 inches in front of where they are.
So that is why I was saying the smaller version in the same series would still be overkill, but regardless, this is what she had in mind. This is what she loved. She's got no regrets, so congratulations because they are stupendously good speakers.
All right, so Iris's 55-inch B6 OLED has burned in. She does use it as a computer monitor, but she's been very careful never to leave any static images on the screen for long periods of time. Nonetheless, the effects seem to be cumulative, and a small image from an instant messenger app is now clearly burned in and visible at all times, even though it was only ever on screen for 1 to 2 minutes at a time, and always minimized right away. Always? You didn't forget for like 18 straight hours
been a
one time.
Very saturated image, unfortunately, but no, regardless, there it is. Clear
it's
as
big.
Day.
It's big. It's big, and it's in like the it's towards the center of the screen, but in the top right quadrant.
There's something down in the lower left there too that's been burned in, which is probably the Windows Start thingy, something like that.
Yeah,
unfortunately, but no, it's
anyway,
clear as day.
She wanted an upgrade anyway, but now she's clearly hesitant to get another larger OLED. Is there any TV model we could recommend that gets close to OLED performance without any fear of burn-in? Well, I guess that would be the QLED.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going for a current model, Samsung. it would be a Samsung, which would be a very nice choice. Now, I like the Q8 FN or the brand new Q80R. As the more value.
She's clearly using this for gaming because there's an Xbox or some sort of computer sitting on the ground right next to it.
Definitely for computer purposes, yeah. And I mean, yeah, if you are a gamer, that it'll be a tremendous choice, those QLEDs. So value-wise, I think the Q8 or the Q80 is the top value pick. But if you want the out-and-out best that Samsung has to offer and you're willing to pay the price for it, then of course the Q9 or the Q90. Now, I'm looking at this setup and I'm like, there is no way that far off axis viewing is a priority. I mean, she's got to be sitting straight bang onto this thing, right?
Yeah. Well, if she's not, then she's sitting directly in front of one of those speakers because they are flanking that TV.
So I would actually point you, because I mean, it's starting to get tough to find now as stock runs out, but I would actually point you to last year's Q9 because the native panel contrast of the Q9 is higher, plus it has really good full array local dimming. Because the Q90, they've done the thing where they're trying to get the wide viewing angles, but to do that, they've put a filter in there that actually reduces the native panel contrast. So if you want as close to OLED as you can get, the Q9 from 2018 would probably be the best choice of the currently available models. But I do want to mention, I poked over at Amazon, and Sony's X940E, which is only available in a 75-inch size. There is no other size besides 75 inches, and I don't know if you were going for a 65 or a 75. If you were going for a 75...
This is the kind of... Based on her speaker choices, this is the kind of girl who's probably going to go with the smaller TV.
Possibly.
Right? Is that what I'm...
Possibly, but I don't know. If you were considering a 75-inch, the X940E, which is from, I mean, it's ancient history now from 2017, but you can find them on Amazon right now for $2,000, which is ridiculous. It was $6,000 when that came out. So that is a ridiculously good price, and it's a fantastic full array local dimming 75-inch TV that I can highly recommend. So that might be a choice if the size works for you.
I think that size would work fine for her. So I think she's got she just has to inch the speakers out just a tiny bit, and then she'll get that 75er in there. That's cool. All right, Stefan. Stefan has sent us a number of questions over the past few weeks dealing with subwoofer choices, projector and screen choices, and whether he needs separates in his 15.5 by 16.5 room where he likes to have friends over to watch sports and movies. Separates?
He asked about it.
Okay.
That was fun.
I know. So he sent a few pictures and now has a few questions. So his room is some sort of cinder block prison.
It is a cinder block bunker, which I wasn't aware of. It's tile flooring, which we can see. I mean, this picture was taken when he was moving things in and out.
Vaulted ceiling with open bays and no insulation anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, not only vaulted, but like tented. It's like a tented ceiling. It's angled on all four sides with visible ceiling joists there. But I mean, this, doggy, you need some absorption in here somewhere, sir. My goodness, do you need some absorption in here? This is the hardest, most reflective flat room I might have ever seen.
I like how his cabinet that he has in here, it looks like it's built into the wall, but I don't think it is. But it's just plywood.
Oh yes, yeah.
You know, built together and as few angles as possible, so it won't even work as diffuser.
No, that is not a diffuser. No.
It is just, he does have some sort of artwork on the back wall, it looks like, sort of. Whatever he's thing is.
I mean, the what's covering his windows are just blinds. So I mean, even though we always say curtains really do nothing acoustically anyway, blinds definitely do nothing acoustically. So wowzers, yeah. Anything you were considering spending money on, sir, you need to get some absorption in this room before anything
before
else.
You do anything.
It can be DIY.
This room must
we have zero problem with doing DIY, but you could not put too much in here.
Let's ignore all of his questions. Just tell him what we should think he should do to his room. So let me start off with what you should do to start with. I mean, clearly, Rob's going to talk about all the insulation, all the room treatments, and then the corner traps and all that other stuff. But what you need to do first is take all those bays in your ceiling and just fill them up with, like even the pink insulation or whatever it is, right? Just get all that stuff up there.
And then white just put stuff that they put above garages is perfectly, it's even cheaper and perfectly fine for this purpose.
Right. And then just cover the entire, if you want to keep the same 100% white everything aesthetic, just get, white speaker grill cloth.
He wants a projector, so I ideally don't keep everything white since he wants a projector. But
I know,
you can't have too much in this space. Anywhere you can put absorption, but that ceiling.
I would fill up that entire, all those bays with insulation and cover the entire thing with acoustically transparent fabric of your color choice, black, brown,
and being
burlap,
the ceiling,
whatever.
You could go for cheap speaker grill cloth and it'd be fine.
Oh, yes. Just staple it up there. No big deal. And then you need to put as much on your walls as you possibly can because this place has got to be reverberant as heck. So anyways, let's go, I guess, with his questions here. Should he plan on eventually upgrading his Mica MB42 surround backs and his Fluence bipole side surround speakers? I mean, everybody should consider upgrading everything at all times. So yes,
one day
But
eventually, but that is not your priority
not
right
until
now.
this room is not a white cinder block prison.
That's right. Acoustics first, because those speakers, I mean, are they the greatest speakers ever? Certainly not. Certainly one day you can think, yep, one day I'll have matching speakers all around. Absolutely, but they are not the priority.
No. So he's using a Marantz SR7012 receiver and like to install 4 Atmos speakers, but with his tinted ceiling and ceiling fan right in the middle, do we have any ideas for Atmos speakers that would work in his room? Very high placed the prime elevation speakers.
They could. I could also point you to those Boston Soundwares that accessories for less sells. Those would be easy to mount. So I think the Boston Soundwares would be a good choice in here.
Yeah. With his plan to get an Epson 5050, you can't buy anything until you put installation in place. You're not allowed to spend any more money on, God forbid, separates or anything else until this room has some room treatments.
I bet you with a quarter of a watt and a very inefficient speaker, it just zings around this room for so long that you can't possibly need it louder.
The rainfall, the waterfall graph looks like rain. It just keeps, it looks like a tidal wave coming in forever. Tsunami. It's the tsunami. It's the tsunami home theater. Anyways, with his plan to get a Epson 5050 UB and a 120-inch Elite Screens Aeon Cinegray, the only thing in the room that's going to be gray is the screen.
Because he wanted ambient light rejecting.
Well, I would think so, because there's ambient light all over the place no matter what you do. Ambient light rejecting screen, will the light from the ceiling fan be too problematic? He'll be able to dim it, but he does prefer to have it on when friends are over to watch a football game.
I mean, it is problematic. It's right overhead in a path that could definitely go from light to screen to your eye without any difficulty. Dimming it, good. The Cinegray 3D is a reasonable ambient light rejecting material, so it'll help you a little bit. But actually, I would suggest, so first of all, have a look with it without any light on, because when the screen is lit up, it produces a substantial amount of light to, see your surroundings, right? It's 120 inches, the whole thing being lit up. But also, that Elite Screen's Aeon frame, optionally, it doesn't come with it by default, but optionally you can get it where it has the strip of light that goes backwards, right? So it's like almost like bias lighting.
Oh, like bias.
It's
okay,
like bias
lighting. The ambient light or whatever.
Ambilight, yeah. So I would consider that, because having the light go from the frame of the screen itself onto your front wall to just give you some ambient light, with at least that light isn't going directly onto the screen to your eyes, right? At least it's firing backwards from the screen.
I mean, just install some sconces in this place, man. Just I mean, really, I mean, you're with cinder blocks, you should be putting up like 2x or 1x material on the wall and just making bays and then filling everything with insulation.
Can't have too much in here.
And diffusion and or whatever, and then covering the whole thing with speaker cloth all the way around, whatever color you want. And then you can talk to me about screens and lights. It's so white. Everything is so white. So very white. When he gets his projector, he'll move his Curo monitor to his bedroom. Is it really a monitor and not a TV? So it doesn't have any speakers. I'm sorry. It is really a monitor and not a TV, so it doesn't have any speakers at all. He doesn't want anything expensive, so he's considering a Yamaha YAS 108 soundbar. Do we agree with that, or would we recommend something else much more highly? I think that's fine.
I like that one. I like that choice.
I'm just looking for something to make sound, and I literally do not think you're like, I found one that's $1 cheaper. Fine, go with that one. I literally don't think it matters. Don't try to buy something that's doing too much.
Yeah. No, for soundbars that are not Atmos soundbars, I am quite a fan of Yamaha's YAS and Bar 400 if you want one that works with the music cast system. But he just wants the basic one, and the YAS 108, which should be actually cheap now, because the YAS 109 just came out, and the only thing it added is it works more closely with voice assistants. So the 108 seems like a great choice to me here.
Yeah. But seriously, room treatments, lots and lots of room treatments. Monty, first up, Monty just want to update us regarding his whole house audio setup in the house he just moved into, the one that uses speaker wire inputs to feed the distribution amp. He wants to use the Slimline Marantz receiver that he already owns in another room, so he's just adding the inexpensive Dayton amp that we always recommend to the Zone 2 pre-outs of his Marantz. So I guess
that's the update, and that is fine. That is great. That's all you needed.
Sounds like it works to me. In his new living room, there's a built-in shelving unit that with a cutout that was clearly meant for a CRT TV. Oh, wasn't that a good idea?
It'll never change. This is the way it'll be
custom-made cabinet that was custom-made for their 36-inch CRT, and they basically, when flat screens came out and they finally decided to get one, they just had the same custom guy come along and just cut the whole top of it off and throw it away. I'm like, well, that was worth all the money. The cutout is 45 inches wide by 35 inches high and 27 inches deep. For the time being, he's using a 3-in-1 TV stand so that his 55-inch OLED can go in front of this cutout, but he doesn't want the TV stand sticking out in front of the shelving unit, so he'd like to properly mount the TV. He hasn't found any extending TV wall mounts that are deep enough for the full 27 inches of this cutout, so some modifications is necessary. He's thinking the easiest thing would be just install some vertical 2x4s towards the front of the cutout and use the normal TV wall mount. He'd like to use a KEF speaker bar, so with having the large air cavity behind it be problem sound-wise, should he seal off the cutout or decrease its depth, or is leaving it open with just some 2x4s at the front to hold the TV wall mount going to be okay?
And he did mention that he doesn't actually plan to have any equipment back there. It's just temporarily. That's where he's set his Blu-ray player and a couple other items for the moment. But he'll have some wires in that cavity back there, but not actually equipment.
I don't see any problem with leaving that cavity open. I mean, I don't really. I mean, my concern would be mounting 2x4s to this thing and hoping that it's going to hold the TV mount. I mean, that would be the thing that would concern me more than anything.
Although, I mean, you could construct something that actually does secure to that actual back wall. You know, it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to look pretty at all. So, something could secure to that actual back wall and then just bring some 2x4s to the front where you could just put a normal TV wall mount. I mean, I'd maybe throw like one layer of regular insulation back there into that cavity as a just in case, just so you don't have a literal like weird echo or something going on back there. But that'd be about it. Doesn't have to look pretty at all.
Yeah,
it's all going to be hidden.
It's all going to be all right. I wouldn't worry. Yes, a little insulation just in case is fine. There's a spare room above the garage they'd like to turn into a dedicated room for movies and video games. It's 19 by 17.5 by 9, so almost 3,000 cubic feet. There's a window on the 17.5 foot wall opposite the doors across the room from the entrance, a bedroom and a closet. On either side of his window are built-in bookcases that could potentially be removed, but it'd be a lot easier to keep them. There are a couple of skylights in the 19-foot wall to the left, a ceiling fan in the middle overhead, and the only air return for this room is only air return for this room is on the 19-foot wall on the right. He says he's planning on eventually removing the skylights.
I don't know about that, but okay. That is what he said in his email. Yeah.
All right, so I'm sort of kind of looking at this thing here. So there's an HVAC return on the right. There's two skylights very near the wall on the left. There's bookshelves on either side of a seating bench.
That is underneath the window. Yep. And then all the doors are on one side of the room.
Or the back of the room.
Which is good. Bathroom door on the left, closet door on the right, and the actual entrance in the middle.
Yeah. All right. That wasn't the question, though.
That's the setup,
That's the setup. Okay. So this would be the first time of having a dedicated movie video game room, and he'd like to piece it together slowly over time. So he just wants to put together a good plan of attack. First and foremost, how would we orient this room? He'd rather not completely cover up the window or remove the ceiling fan. So would we ever consider a projector, or could a large flat panel make sense? Well, how close are you going to sit to this thing?
Yeah, because I mean, seating looks like you can put it just about anywhere that you want to. So yeah, that's not really an issue.
I mean, you could. If you really want to keep the bookshelf and the seating bench and the window on that side, you could put everything so that it is on what you're calling the right wall.
Yeah, have your back where the skylights are, right? So there's the 19-foot wall that has the skylights. We would call your back wall, and then the 19-foot wall that has the HVAC return in it, we would call that your front wall. I would probably do that.
The bookshelves would be on your left, and to the right would be all the doors.
Yep. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
That's where I would do it to start with. Now, can you put a flat panel in here?
Sure could.
Yes.
I mean, there are like 82, 85-inch flat panels that aren't ridiculously expensive anymore. And that's a nice large size. You sit 10 feet away from that and you're laughing. Or you absolutely could do projector in here. There's really no reason why you couldn't. The only question is we don't know the exact dimensions of where that HVAC return vent is.
Where it is, if it's high on the wall, or
high on the wall, low on the wall.
Like
exactly how far to the right and that. So I mean, it might be close to the screen, depending on what screen size you choose in that. But I don't see that as a massive
HVAC
problem.
returns usually is on the ground, though. It's really usually on the ground.
Usually.
Yeah. So I would not. I mean, it seems to me that and with the height, it's like 9 feet. Isn't that what he said? 9 feet. So you got plenty of room above your head to mount the projector to the back wall and then shoot it over the top of your head. But I mean, I would seriously consider just getting a nice big flat panel and sitting close to it. You put some curtains over the window to your left, the skylight in the back. Whatever. Don't worry about it.
If you do remove them, whatever it is, but you could also just cover them so that there isn't light pouring in if you do go projector in here. But I mean, there's not much reason room-wise, planning-wise, orientation-wise why you couldn't make that decision. I mean, you could even start with a flat panel and upgrade to a projector later. So I don't think this is a situation where you're like, I'm going to be strictly limited by the type of display that I'm choosing. I think if you go with that orientation, either works easily.
Yeah. He already owns a PC 2000 from SVS and a pair of Ascend Sierra 2s. He'd like that level of performance and price. Would it make sense to use those as a starting point and expand the rest of his system from there? Or should he get all new gear for this room? I think that sounds great.
I mean, those are
Go with that.
Perfectly appropriate. I'd add a second PC 2000.
Yeah.
But that's a perfectly appropriate subwoofer for 3,000 cubic feet. The Ascend Sierra 2s. I mean, if you go with a flat panel, you're only 10 feet away easily. Even if you're sitting 12 or 13 feet away, they're still fine. Or you move them to surround duty and upgrade to Sierra Horizons up front or something like that. So there's no reason why you must replace these with all new equipment at all. You could certainly start with those.
Right. He's never acoustically treated a room before. If you were only do a little at a time, would it be more important to treat the back wall or the side walls? Generally speaking, we'd say the side walls, but in your case, since the room's going to be wider than it is long, your first reflection point is probably going to be behind you.
And he has stuff where his
bookshelves
sides,
on the left.
Bookshelves on the left and doors on the right. So in your case, I'd be treating that back wall underneath the skylights for sure.
Yeah, I do the back wall, I do the corners, and I do the front wall.
And I do the
That's what I would
ceiling
start
potentially in here too.
Yeah, it's a high ceiling.
It is, and it's got
So
some bends to it,
angles
to it. Yes.
Yeah. With the closet entrance in one corner, the thought occurred to him that he might put all the home theater gear in there, but he can already tell it gets very warm in that closet. So should he look into venting the closet in some way? Yeah.
But why? Why even put it?
Why go through
closet?
the hassle? I mean, honestly, dude, you know what? I mean, I know this is going to sound stupid, but let's just get crazy in here for a second. You could literally build a false wall across that bookshelf and that whole thing, and then put everything on the currently existing shelves that are back there.
You could also put a false wall all along the flat wall that we're going to be calling your front wall, the one that's opposite the skylights, and you could have everything there. Or you could just very simply have a perfectly normal TV stand on that 19-foot wall that we're calling your front wall now, and there lives your equipment. I mean, I know people like this idea of, I don't see any of the gear. Well, if you want to do that, you'd make something false. I don't know if I'd go to the problem of putting stuff in a hot closet and worrying about it.
I wouldn't. I mean, I don't understand why people can't live with their gear in
I
their
love
room.
seeing my gear. That's half the fun is seeing the gear to me.
Well,
so.
that's me and speakers. I'm like, people are like, I want to build a false wall and put my $3,000 pair of speakers behind. I'm like, not me. I want people to come in and say, "Ooh, I've never seen those speakers before. What are they? Oh, you can afford them. That's what they are." So, it's up to you, man. I mean, you've got options if you really want to do it, if you're really dedicated to that. But it's never, especially in a room like this where you're literally going to be swimming in space. you're going to have more space than you're actually going to use for your theater. The real question you should be asking is, where should I put my surrounds? Because they're going to be really far. That's the question you should be answering, because they'll be really far away from you on your left or your right. But
to me, on stands is the answer. But
yeah, me too. But he's worried about putting his gear. It's not even like in a different part of the house. It's literally in a door right there.
He could also just do a 5.2 point whatever system, though. And if he does go projector, the seat is, I don't know, 3-4 feet off the back wall, and his side surround speakers actually end up on the back wall spread far apart. That could work in here quite easily.
I would be more for that than trying to do a 7-point system in here. But he didn't even ask those questions yet, so let him right in. All right, I gotta get this dog.
Okay, so let's try Robin, and that'll be it.
No, Robin's multi-part.
It's not long, though. It's not long. I want to at least get an even number.
Robin has dual. I'm sorry, dual?
Nope, just one.
Daddy needs a nap. Robin has a Denon X4500H and tried using the Audyssey MultEQ XT32 with SubEQ HT audio setup with 2 subwoofers in opposite corners of the room. 8 microphone positions were used. Bah. If you were to measure with a tape measure, subwoofer 1 is 18 feet from the main listening position, and subwoofer 2 is 7 feet, but Audyssey's distances were set to 22.6 and 21.8 feet, respectively. Should those distance settings be changed manually or left alone? You should leave them alone. Yep. That is more about delay than it is about physical distance from you to your subwoofer.
Now, I mean, on top of all that, we mentioned earlier in this podcast the notion of actually not having the 2 subwoofers set independently, which, I mean, that's one of the features people love about XT32 and SubEQ HT. They're like, oh, it sets the 2 subwoofers independently. That seems like a really good idea. But on this podcast, we are more in favor of just saying you only have one subwoofer and running the signal in mono. So over at avrant.com, I've got my 12-step guide to setting up dual subwoofers, which will detail all of the steps that you can take to send it a mono signal, and then you won't be worrying about this. And if you do follow that 12-step process and send it the mono signal telling your AV receiver you actually only have one subwoofer, it'll still give you some distance setting that does not equal the tape measure setting. But you should leave that alone, because it is about the acoustic timing, not the physical timing. Because again, these bass sound waves are so long that you're not getting a direct sound wave. It's reflected around your room a bunch of times, and then it's time aligning that bass properly to the rest of your speakers. So leave the distance settings alone.
So during the initial volume test, when Audyssey was asking you to manually set the 2 subwoofers volume dials, and when the speaker detection tones were first played at the beginning, it was easy to hear sub 1 and sub 2 separately. But during all the rest of the chirps and rumble to set the EQ, it didn't seem like any sound was coming out of sub 1 at all.
Tom is reading.
Wait a second, hold on. Sub 18 and sub 2 is 7. Okay, whatever.
Right.
Sub 2. Robin even put his hand on that sub at one point, and it didn't seem to be moving even a little. Is that normal? Is that just how Audyssey XT32 does things, or is something wrong? It's normal. Leave it alone. Why are you in the room? Get out of the room. Why? I'm not in the room when I do this. I press the button on my remote and I walk out of the room. I'm not in the room. Do you want the room to? I mean, especially if you're physically between the sub and the speaker and the microphone. I mean, you could be affecting it, or God forbid, you're actually close to the microphone where you will absolutely affect the measurements. Get out of the room. You're not supposed to be in there.
Now, I don't know if Sub 1 actually truly wasn't doing anything at all. When Audyssey, so even if you use the dual SubEQ HT setup within there, where it's giving independent volume and distance levels to the 2 subs, which we're saying ultimately not to do, but even if it does all that, when it comes time to EQ, it EQs them as one. So you will not hear separate sounds coming out of sub 1 and sub 2 when it's doing the EQ settings, so that is normal.
Yeah. And that's right. And the fact that one's playing louder than the other is
also
immaterial.
very normal.
Yeah. So the final results have sub 1's trim level at -5.5 and sub 2's trim level at -6. Is that good, bad, something to change? It's fine.
That is totally fine.
If you really care, turn the volume level on your the volume knob on your subs down just a little bit, and then rerun, and then it'll give you a different trim level. But all it's doing is setting it.
So, I mean, in essence, Robin, if you actually just wanted to leave everything as is, because interestingly, even though physically they have very different distances, it's set what...
The trim level is almost exactly
the trim level is almost exactly the same, and the distances are very close to one another, even though physically the subs are not the similar distances. Acoustically, they are. So you're in a situation where you could actually kind of just leave everything exactly as it is and not worry about it. But since I imagine you're the type of person who is going to worry about this, whether we say to or not, check out that 12-step guide to setting up dual subs, and that should help you out.
All right, who's left?
We have Zach R, Tom D, Chad B, Matt C in Australia, and oh boy, I'm looking forward to talking about Matt's because that's an interesting one. And let's see, Francis A, and I think that was the last one on to this week's list. Got a whole bunch of questions in on Monday and Tuesday, so next week, fellas.
All right, and ladies, could be ladies.
Could be.
All right, we want to thank our listeners of the week. Becoming a listener of the week, you have to just support the podcast. We want to thank our 85 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yeah, patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation. Thanks very much to our 85 patrons over there.
And we want to thank Carlton B for offering to help us figure out what the heck's wrong with our website, and Sammy for talking us up to SVS and accessories.
Yeah, Carlton and Sammy, thank you both very much for the support. And if you are out there listening and thinking, I don't want to sign up for Patreon, but I'd like to throw these guys a couple of shekels, well then come to avrant.com, and over on the right-hand side it says Support AVRant, where you can go and do a one-time donation via PayPal.
And I've actually had people tell me that they appreciate the PayPal because you can do it anonymously.
That's right.
And that's another way of doing it. So thank you very much to all of our supporters. For AVRant, I'm Tom H.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.